Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday lunchtime as we have a conversation with Kevin Green, Chief People Officer of First Bus. But as always, just want to say, really do appreciate you giving the time to us. We know that we're all super busy, although we do know that more people are at home on a Friday than many other days of the week. So hopefully you're sat at home or maybe still in the office and you've got your cup of tea and a little bit of lunch and you're ready to listen to what I hope is going to be I know is going to be a really interesting and hopefully informative conversation. So just before I introduce Kevin and we start getting into it, just say today we're taking a slightly different tack. So there's no slides. Kevin and I had a bit of a pre-brief 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we started getting in some really meaty topics and really wrestling with some kind of interesting things that are going on in this people space in corporate life. And I felt actually we got such great wisdom, person with great experience who's kind of been there, done it, got the t-shirt, that I wanted to just let the conversation flow. But I'd like, for any of you who've joined me before, you know I like you to be involved, to the audience. The best way that seems to work is to write in the chat or a question on the Q&A, and then I'll pick that up and get involved with Kevin and hold his feet to the fire and make sure he answers it correctly. You can tell me if that's not the case. So without further ado, Kevin, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us here at the Inpulse.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Not at all. So Kevin, I guess to start with, as always, some people will know your background, some people know you've written a book, but why don't you just give us a little bit about your plotted history and how you got to here?
Yeah, I sort of I've had a bit of an eclectic career, and I've sort of been an HR director before. I was at Royal Mail for 5 years pre-privatisation, so involved in the transformation of that business. I then went and worked at the REC as the chief executive, which is the professional body for the recruitment industry. A fantastic job where, you know, I was representing the sort of the £36 billion recruitment industry in the UK. I was on the global board, so I was working across the globe on behalf of that profession. And then I suppose in 2018, I decided I was going to, you know, step away from full-time permanent employment. I wrote my book, Competitive People Strategy, which did very well. It was a book I always wanted to write around, you know, a book about what does a people strategy look like. So written very much for chief execs and HR directors. And at the same time, I was sort of went plural. So I was working for or with you know, 4 or 5 entrepreneurial businesses, PE backed, most of them, and a couple of advisory roles. So I was busy, but not in full-time occupation. And that's how I thought it would end. I did a couple of bits of consultancy work. And one of the things I did was I helped First Bus think about how they transition out of the pandemic period and how they did some changes on some of the people stuff. So I was helping Jeanette Bell. And she then said, would I act as our interim chief people officer and help her find someone? I started to do that gig and enjoyed it and was working with the team and articulating what their people strategy might look like. And then one Friday afternoon, having been interviewing lots of people for the role, Jeanette said to me, why don't you just do this? We like you and you seem to like this. And for the love of God, I'm not quite sure how, but I found myself back in a full-time role. Working in First Bus as their chief people officer, which I've enjoyed immensely. And I've been doing it for 16 months now, I think. So, you know, and I suppose we'll get onto this in a moment, but, you know, a major transformation of historically a business which has treated people as a cost and a commodity, and really wanted to turn itself into a much more of a service business. So, you know, that's what attracted me. I like real businesses with people doing real jobs. And I'm an HR director that's always interested in change and transformation. I'm not a steady state type of guy. So this fitted, you know, and I thought, well, why not do this for 3 or 4 years and then see what happens next? So, you know, you never say never, do you?
Fantastic. Love that. Very, thank you for the plot of history of how we got here. A couple of things just to point out. For those of you who are listening in, we're going to be covering some of those big topics that Kevin talked about. We're going to be looking at transformation. We're going to be looking at change. We're going to be looking at engagement, some of the big changes you made within engagement. We're also going to be looking at diversity and inclusion and climate change and looking how do we, as a people community, a HR community, how do we face into these huge issues that are already here? And there are a lot of expectations around, I think would be fair to say, Kevin, that the world stroke business expects of us to sort of lead on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think climate change and the ESG agenda is a big opportunity for HR and people, the people function. But it means we need to do things differently, and we need to look at things differently. You know, I think HR as a profession has been very process driven and very much around compliance. And I think this is about, you know, I think our agenda is around change and mindset shift and how we get people to change their behaviour. So whether that's within our organisations or from a broader perspective in terms of climate change. But we've got a big climate agenda. You know, we've committed to zero carbon by 2035, which sounds, you know, easy, but for a transport business and for, you know, with 5,500 diesel buses pouring out that stuff into the environment every day, you know, it's a huge shift. It's £1 billion investment, 100 million a year for a decade. We've got about 200 odd electric buses, another a couple of hundred on order. So, you know, we are really already on the way. So that's important, but it's also about the infrastructure. It's about, you know, not just the buses themselves, but the charging infrastructure. And we've got opportunities to provide services to B2B and B2C that we're exploring. So there's a commercial avenue in there as well. But it's also helped us with customers and employees say that we're not, you know, us companies do something really important, right? They connect people. They often people that are at the lower, social economic group, Matt. And this is their only way of getting to hospital appointments, getting to school, getting to university. So we play a big role in the community anyhow. And if we can do that in an environmentally sustainable way, then that's what we should be doing, because, you know, we have a role that we play. You know, we're a private sector organisation providing public transport. And it's hugely important for the communities that we work in. So there's a big piece in there about social value and the social and economic fabric of the country.
Yeah, and Kevin, let's just dig into this bit for everyone listening. I think it'd be helpful for you to just contextualise at the sort of highest level the kind of some of the issues you're facing into the transformation you're going through, and you've already started to do that. And the reason is then we'll chunk down into some of those issues individually, like engagement and inclusion, diversity.
Yeah.
Start us of where is First Bus at, and kind of the context that we're having this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a new leadership team came together under Jeanette's leadership about 2 years ago, and it was very much about transformation. And at the heart of that transformation is moving from a business which is all about assets and buses into one which is about service, and it's about customer and people. And that sounds quite simple, but in reality, it's quite a difficult transition. And as I say, we have historically treated our people as a cost and a commodity. And so we have embarked on something which is quite radical. So our strategy is quite simple: recover bus, better bus, bigger bus, and beyond the bus. And under each of those, there are elements. So recover bus is about, you know, recovering from the pandemic. It's about getting customers back using our service. We're at about 81, 82% now. It's about the driver crisis that we had, which was the Great Resignation, and us struggling to retain people, but also attract people to what's important. And better bus is about carbon, which I've just talked about, the environmental stuff. It's about people and it's about customer. 3 clear strategies about what we're going to do, very much focus around measurable improvement and having a scorecard. Bigger is about organic growth, B2B, M&A activity. We've bought 2 businesses in the last 6 months. There will be others. We are also focusing on, you know, for one of the big distribution companies in this country, we do all of their movement of their staff. So we do things like the Commonwealth Games. So we do a lot of B2B activity. And then thirdly, there's organic growth. So there's organic growth, there's our fast growth businesses, and then there's M&A activity. And then beyond the bus is in reality of us moving into some of those areas in adjacent space, which is, as I just talked about, if we put the charging infrastructure on 60 depots across the country and we own that, then when our buses are out on the road during the day, why don't we charge, I don't know, vehicles for logistic companies or do B2C, but we're also interested in platform plays. We're interested in providing new services to consumers as well, where people can buy tickets for any kind of transport provision, and we're doing JV. So you can see that's quite a progressive agenda strategically. We're going from just getting better at what we currently do right the way through to trying to grow and be better. And then we're also going into new markets and new opportunities. So that's a big transformation in itself. And underpinning that from a people strategy point of view, there's a talent strategy, there's a skill strategy, workforce strategy, and at the heart of it, a lot around engagement.
Yeah. Perfect, and we'll come on to that in a moment. I just one last thing on this, and for everyone listening, I've been in quite a number of conversations with CPOs and a couple of CEOs over the last 2-3 months about framing and articulating more to their people about the true revolution that we are going through as businesses at this time. And because we bandy around transformation and change a lot, and we have done for many years, but since the dawn of time. But the point I want to get to is actually we really are in quite a revolutionary time, and sort of helping our people see that and be able to articulate that. And actually from the negative side of like the anxiety, uncertainty that can bring, to the opportunity and hope and excitement that can bring, having that kind of quite big conversation, as opposed to, oh, by the way, we've got another strategy and we're going to do this thing here. Oh, by the way, there's another change we need to make there. So almost chunky up to say what you're part of is kind of universal, and it is one of those moments in time that we look back in 2040s and we go, gosh, those 2020s, woo, things.
Yeah, there's so much going on. You're absolutely right, and I think the ability of an organisation to thrive in the context in which we're operating in is I think, very dependent on its ability to do what you just said, excite people, inspire people, and get them to see the opportunities. Because there are, we're in a very traditional business. Bus usage has been gradually declining over the last 20 years. But if you really think about what we have to do in the next 20 years of getting people out of cars, modal shift, and get them onto public transport, then public transport has got to it's got to be more accessible. We've got to digitalize it. We've got to make it easy for people to travel. We've got to make it a better experience so that they do it more regularly. So that shift, just the environmental shift is huge. You then sort of overlay the whole sort of, economic change, I suppose, that we're going through, where, again, we are coming out of a period where, people, the way of working has changed. People have different aspirations about what they want from an employer. People have, we found that lots of people that historically, even our bus drivers and engineers that have historically been really happy to work overtime and stuff, now don't want to. And they are talking to us about how they feel about the organisation. So there's a macro shift in sort of the mindset of employees. And for us, a lot of that's about how do we tap into that? And some of that's around engaging people. So it's about how do you involve them in articulating the strategy. So that strategy, even though it's clearly been articulated, if you like, top down, we create a lot of opportunity for people bottom up to feed into it. So we've used design thinking, and one of our big change programs is called people centricity, which is changing it bottom up rather than hierarchical view of transformation. Is we know best in the center or at the top of the organization. Yeah. We're going to tell you what you need to do differently, communicate, and then you need to follow. Yeah. In reality, I think we've got to do it differently. And I think that's hugely important. That's a big shift, which is you've got to get people to invest in it, to feel that they're part of it. And to do that, you have to ask them questions, involve them in the process, get their ideas, get their views, feed it back to them. So it may be slower and it may take more time, But if you really want to retain the people that within the organisation, and more importantly, you want them to give discretionary effort, then you've got to involve them in the process of articulating the strategy. And our purpose is your journey is our everything was crafted with a bottom-up involvement of our frontline staff, because for us this is about the customer. Their journeys are everything, but every employee. We want to look after them from cradle to grave. So we want to have a great candidate experience. We want to bring them into our organisation, train and develop them, make them feel comfortable, make them feel that their voice is listened to, make them feel that they can, they can contribute and give of their all and be recognised and supported, whoever they are, which takes you down to the inclusion stuff. So I think it's about how you manage change and how you frame it. You need to frame it quite differently because the environment is moving at a pace. So the ability of your organisation to change and be in front of that means you need to be changing at a faster velocity.
Yeah, no, that's very good. And for everyone listening, 20 minutes in, unashamedly, I'm sticking around this environment and context because hopefully it's resonating. You're going, gosh, yeah, actually, we're going through a lot of that too. But then what I want to look at then is, so what are the tools that we have? How do we achieve some of what you've described, Kevin, which is we've got to take people on the journey. Actually, what I heard was there's quite a different skill set needed from our senior leaders, because it's not command and control, it's coaching and facilitation. It's not tell, it's involve. So talk to me about how you've been facing into that. And for those listening, I'm sure they're fascinated to go, how do you support, and how is First Bus looking at how we get our leaders to come with a different skill set?
So, there's a range of things. So, I'm a great believer in you've got to work top down, bottom up, So from a top down perspective, new leadership team, creating greater clarity about purpose. We've done work around values. We've done that as well as launching our, Recover Better Better. So we've done that in an inclusive, engaging way. We've also done quite a lot of work around restructuring our business. So we've gone from sort of 14 different operating companies down to 6 businesses. We made, some really quite tough choices. We put a lot of our MDs and their leadership teams at risk. We articulated the skills and the behaviours we were looking for. We've assessed our own leaders against that new profile. And we've brought 25% of the people that have taken those roles as operations directors, engineering directors and commercial directors and MDs have come from outside. So we've freshened up our leadership population. And we've done that top down. Bottom up, we've done a lot of work involving drivers and engineers and frontline managers in helping us articulate what are the things that are really important to them. So we know we get regular feedback, and we'll talk about engagement in a moment, but we do frontline leadership sessions, myself and Jeanette, every quarter, talk to all frontline managers across the organisation with none of the other hierarchy involved. So they tell us warts and all what's going on, what they feel is working, what isn't working. We've done a lot of work around giving them the tools to be able to give us the feedback about what we need to do. We've piloted things in 4 depots. And people centricity is now on rollout. So we're going to change the role of all frontline managers, our supervisors, staff managers and ops managers. We're going to give them a training intervention. We're doing process work across the jobs that we've asked them to do. And that's happening. And we're doing it in Scotland. It's just coming to an end. First wave 1, 6 waves across the business across the next 18 months. So what you've got is top down, bottom up. We've got a big leadership intervention, which is happening. We're just about to launch that for our top 100, which is, again, we've got the right people on the bus. Let's give them the skills. Let's give them the language. Let's help them articulate this. And then let's reinforce our purpose and our values throughout. And there's a whole host of things that we're doing as part of that. Yeah. So you're absolutely right, but it's changing the role of both leaders and managers throughout the organisation to be much less hierarchical and much more around coaching, giving feedback, supporting, developing, and helping. But, one of the things I would say is we've had lots of self-selection. People go, this isn't quite right for me. This isn't what I want to do. And that's fine. And we'll try and retain those people and keep them in the business, but we have to have people that can lead in the way that we need them to lead, because this is the fundamental shift in how an organization behaves.
Okay. Well, listen, for those of you listening, please, any questions around leadership and how Kevin's looking at and leading into the transformation through leadership, do put on. I know Kevin will be happy to answer any of those questions. Just moving us on then, because obviously we advertise this around kind of transforming your engagement approach as well. So I know when we kind of connected with you originally, I think it'd be fair to say engagement was quite a sort of a traditional approach, sort of the once a year, lots of questions, bit of a data dump, very much about just the senior leaders kind of giving their views. And we've watched you over the 15, 18 months completely transform that. I'd love to take credit and say we did it all. Actually, to be fair, you came in knowing what you wanted and just looking for the right partner. But talk to us a little bit about engagement and how important that is to what First Bus, the big objectives you've
let me just go back one stage, because one of the other sort of tactical things that, coming out of the pandemic, what we had was a driver crisis. So in First Bus, like most organisations, we've got three shortages. We've got a labour shortage, which is drivers. We've got a skill shortage, which is engineers. And we've got a talent shortage, which is the leadership and management piece. And we're trying to address all of those shortages, or address getting the right capability and the right mindset in our organisation when clearly other organisations are looking for that. So there are lots of measures that we could see would be successful. So attrition went up to 40% within our driver population. Every driver that we hire, it costs £7,500 to train them, to hire them, and then to train them so that they've got a licence and be a bus driver. So for me, and I can look at absence, which went up post-COVID. I can look at a whole range of different metrics that show you we haven't got the right culture and we're not treating people in the right way. Yeah. Engagement's the lead indicator, though. For me, it's the one that we were going to drive, because it reinforces one of the big messages, which is for every leader and manager in an organisation, these are your people. This is your feedback. This is what they're telling you. So for me, there was a couple of things that we wanted to do differently. One is that I needed the data to be much more regular. So we've gone on a quarter by quarter process, and we needed it to be more granular. So we needed it to be owned as at a lower level as possible within the organisation. So that's the journey we've been on. We've measured it 4 times. We're in the middle of our 4th dip at the moment. And we're going to continue to do that next year. And that's because the process of change is we're looking at speed. Pace is quite important in terms of building up the momentum. So what we wanted to do is we couldn't wait a year and hope for some gradual improvement. What we wanted to say was, we want you to look at this on a regular basis. Now, what we used to do, big deep dive, everyone had an action plan. HR used to then hold the managers accountable. And we've gone completely the other way, which is, I'm not going to get you to do action planning. I'm not going to get you to write down a big list of 30 things you're going to do. What I'm interested in is, these are your people. They're giving you feedback. You do what you think's right. So, we're trying to empower frontline managers and leaders to behave in a different way, and giving them the data on a regular basis is hugely part of that.
Yeah.
Secondly, we have changed some of the core processes. So we had a horrendous performance management process called Job Chats, which was a 14-page form where it would have taken, a frontline manager a long time to talk to a bus driver. And it was all about discipline and absence, and we've gone into something very different, a job. So we've moved to something called a catch-up, which is a 20-minute human conversation. We did it in May, June last year. We did it in January. We'll do it again in April. And this is about saying, I don't need you to record it. I don't need a form. I just want you to make sure that you have the conversations. So you can start to see that subliminally what we're saying is, we're empowering you managers to treat people differently. And we're giving you some of the tools, but we're giving you some of the confidence and belief and some of the data to show what's working, what's not working. But, they're your people. You need to manage them differently, aligned with what we've sort of articulated, which is a much more human-centric sort of organisation.
And just going back upstream, Kevin, a couple of things there, and there's a lot in there for you, for everyone listening. Just how much. I mean, Kevin's made it sound really easy and simple doing what you've done over the last sort of 15 months, but actually it's been a huge change to go from that once a year, the big data dump is all about the exec and massive action plans, to quarterly, much more agile, much more the point of ownership is with the manager and the local team. But just a couple of things. Again, back to that first 20 minutes we talked, it shows its importance further downstream when you come to things like engagement and performance management, because unless you've identified what type of leadership you need and the skill sets and the mindsets you need from leaders, when you then come to, oh, by the way, you've now got your own dashboard. Oh, by the way, this is your data. Oh, by the way, you're going to have the conversation. It's like the whole thing implodes. And I hope you don't mind. I'm going to do it anyway, Kevin, but share with everyone listening. When Kevin and I first met, there was one thing we agreed on everything actually, but there's a couple of delivery points we disagreed on. So I said to you, look, I'm a massive fan of the point of transformation in any organization is the team. That's the point of transformation. When a team goes, what are we going to do? How are we going to take on board what Kevin and the exec are telling us to do? And they start doing that, things change. So we were radically in agreement on that, and managers owning it. Where I was worried, if you remember, was you said, so I'm going to go from once a year to quarterly. And I was like, okay. So our experience of doing that with companies is go a little bit slower, because sometimes it can kill the system. You went, yeah, I'm trying to kill the system. I was like, oh shit. I mean, excuse my French. I was like, okay, this is going to be fun. But to credit to you, you basically did bust the system. But as you did it, you actually rebuilt a new system.
So transformation is a contact sport. It's done day in, day out by frontline managers, and we had to, in some ways, crack some eggs and break some stuff. That was part of some of the messaging, and actually playing back the data. This is what your people are saying to you. This isn't about HR. This is your depot, your managers, your staff are saying they feel unappreciated, they feel stressed, they feel anxious. You're the ones that have got the solution. Now, if you want us to help you, here are the sorts of things we think you should be doing, but you need to do it. Now, we got the data the first time and we got the data the second time, and it hasn't really moved. We had a few green shoots, a couple of percentage increases here and there. It's only now, a year on, that we're starting to see the shift really happen. Yeah. But that's because it takes time. There's a lag, and one of the things is we needed, in a culture where people have been behaving the same way, they will stick to the knitting for much longer than you think. Yeah, so when we did the catch-up work and we put that in place, we took away perhaps 3 disciplines, which is minor little things. What our managers used to do is call people in, you've clicked a wing mirror, let's have a disciplinary conversation, there's a letter. And what we said as part of that process, we're taking it away, right? Now, 6 months afterwards, there were still managers doing that activity. Even though we said to them, it makes no difference in relation to safety. We've told you not to do it. You're still doing it. Why are you still doing it? Well, I believe, no, it doesn't add any value. So we're having to change people's behavior. And so the engagement stuff of going early and saying, we're going to measure this every quarter, we put it in, every manager is bonused on it. Throughout the organization, there are 4 measures, finance, customer, efficiency, and people. And we've got the same 4 measures across the whole of the organization. And actually, that's why we're saying it's important. How your people feel, whether they're engaged or not, and whether they come on this journey is critically important. Now, what's interesting is actually our attrition has been declining. Our absence has been improving. And actually, we knew that it was because of the activity we were doing around engagement. And now we're starting to get the data that shows that some of those improvements that we could feel anecdotally are now being, reinforced by, if you look at the data and you look at the metrics.
Yeah, and I just add to that, and I'm going to bring in, Thrilled the audience are coming in with questions, and please do add any more that you've got, and I'll come to them in just a moment. But I'd also add to that, I think breaking the system and really putting the point of ownership with the manager has been really significant to, oh, this is about us and the change we need to make, not them up there. You know, they always say, excuse my French again, they say, you know, the bastards start 3 levels up from the team, and you go, actually, no, it's about us here and what we need to do, and the changes we can make and put into place. And by the way, having looked at your data, like many companies, the changes people are looking for are things like, I just want to be appreciated a little bit more. I just want to be told thank you. You know, can I have a bit more recognition? It's not reward, it's genuine recognition. I'd like to know a little bit more about what's going on in the organization. It's genuine stuff that isn't a £1 million transformation program. It's the simple leadership.
So let me tell you about people centricity. So people centricity, we piloted it, and what we said is, look, go out and ask frontline managers and, more importantly, frontline staff, what are their ideas? How should we treat them? How should we treat customers? What should we do differently? And there was all sorts of things. There was music on buses, there were bins on buses, there was uniforms. We're changing uniforms. We're going. So our staff said, look, why am I in a shirt and tie? Give me a polo shirt. Give me something that's comfortable. I want shorts. So we're divvying that. So what you've got to be able to do is, if you go out and ask the questions, then you've got to be able to respond. And, you know, you said we did is something that goes through the heart of everything we're doing. And that means, you know, from the surveys, from the catch-ups, you know, we're asking your opinions. And so in the people centricity, there's things like we're painting all the workshops, and not the workshops, the canteens and the breakout spaces. We've got a big toilet refurbishment project. Why is that? Because our staff kept saying, if you value us, this place is a mess. Yeah. You haven't painted this for 20 years. So actually what we did is we didn't go out and get a provider in. We gave them some paint. We gave them a bit of time, and we've got them to go and sort the canteens out and paint it. We have got a supplier in to improve all the toilets. And that's about them playing back. You told us this is what we've done. So we started with the engagement stuff. We've now got a sort of toolkit of 14 or 15 stuff, creating social clubs, doing things that staff want to do within the working hour, but creating different environments and physical environments and stuff. So there's a lot of really simple things that we need to do. What we've done there, though, is we've also created some change for the managers. So we want you to behave differently. Here's a toolkit. Now, they keep saying, but I haven't got time because I've got loads of spreadsheets. I've got all this other work I need to do. So we're having to go back, and we've now started to unpick their jobs. So we're doing workflow right at the front of the organisation. So what we ask our supervisors, our staff managers and our ops managers to do? And we're changing that. We've then given them a training program. So we go, we'll change your jobs. Here's the training, and here's the engagement activity we want you to do with frontline staff. And we're doing it bottom up, depot by depot, operational unit by operational unit. And that will take us 18 months to roll out. But we're already seeing the benefits. I can already see and track what's happening with engagement, what's happening with absence, what's happening with attrition. And we'll get the benefits in bucket loads. So the point is, it's about faith. You've got to believe, you know, it's like my conversation with you. I'm going to have to break stuff. This is going to be horrible for 6 months, but it will come right. And that's what you have to do. You have to believe that it will come right, but it does take time, because you've got to prove to people that we want them to behave differently and treat people differently.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Kevin, we're over halfway through. We've got about 20 minutes left. So I'm going to bring in the audience, really please. Laura, it's great that you're on. Great to have you here. Said, when you moved your leader conversation to not have employees sign to say they've heard things, are there times when you did need to capture delivery, i.e. like safety messages?
Yeah, I mean, we were very good at safety, but the problem we had with our safety approach was, we're going to tell you what we want you to do, and if you get it wrong, we're going to punish you. All right. Now, what you get is compliance, right? What you really want. So let me give you an example. We weren't very good at near misses. And the reason we weren't very good at near misses was because people needed to put their hand up and go, something horrible happened, and we need to learn from that. Yeah. So culturally, we wanted to retain safety, but we wanted to do it in a way which was culturally consistent with how we want to run the organisation. So what we've had to do is we've had to reinvent a lot of things. So those Cat 3s, we've taken them away. Okay. Now, a lot of our managers were going, oh, there's going to be terrible behaviour, there's going to be more accidents. Strangely enough, there isn't. But what we've got to be able to do is to capture the learning from people. We want you to tell us where there's near misses. So what you've got to do is you've got to do everything. All your management processes have got to be culturally aligned. So we are still focusing on safety, but we're doing it in a way which is people-centric rather than, command and control. Do it this way. Here's the policy. And if you don't do it, you're going to get disciplined.
So just to be clear on that for Laura and for everyone listening, the capturing of it. So there's still a conversation to be had, but I think the question was, are there things that do sometimes just need to be captured? You're saying, no, not necessarily, as long as the conversation is had. That's the
I think it was over-engineered. So what you've got to trust people. What we're trying to do is create an environment. And I'll tell you the easiest way of destroying trust, right? Every time you make everyone's scared of making a mistake. Everyone's fearful in the organization because if you make a mistake, you get punished, right? And one of the things we've got to try and do is go, actually, making a mistake is about learning, right? It's about going, oh, what do I do differently? How do I change it? And if you punish people, you're going to push it underground. So you still got to look at the data. Of course, we look at our incidents. Of course, we look at where there are major issues that we need to learn from. But what we're trying to do is to look at it in a positive view and reinforce that. So what we look. So if you think the different, I'm a great Matthew Syed's book, Black Box Thinking, right? It's a classic example of how you compare industries. And the industry he cites all the time as being the best at this is aviation, because they learn from every mistake that's made in a cockpit and they share the information and they try and respond to it. Yeah. Whereas if you punish it, and if you look at the medical industry, no one wants to put their hand up because there's negligence and they're going to be sued. So, you've got to create an open environment where there's trust and then you'll get the learning. So, of course, we look at data. Of course, we capture where there's major problems, but we do it from a perspective of what do we, you ask different questions. It's a positively reinforcing circle rather than a negative one.
Well, and also I just add to that, and I must keep going with the questions. We've got 3 more to get through, it's really quite a mature adult to adult conversation. I've got, I said earlier, 3 sons, and with my 16-year-old now, it's no longer parent, adult child. Or parent to child. It's 2 adults conversing, and actually that takes a little bit of time to adjust to, if you like, being the parent, which a lot of organizations still have a lot of parents and a lot of children as opposed to lots of adults having good conversations. But look, let me move on, if that's all right, because I want to bring in Diane, who said, I'm intrigued by the manager's chat. We have the same issue regarding frontline time and availability. How have you tackled the culture piece regarding we don't have conversations with frontline, or I don't know how to have a conversation?
Right. So you're never going to get this right first time. So one of the things that hopefully you'll pick up from this conversation is, a transformation is a 3 to 5 year process, right? So what we have done is we said, look, we're going to take away that mechanistic, paper-driven, fill in a form, and no one did it anyhow. We only got 5-6% of managers reviewing this with drivers anyhow. So just take that away. Yeah. What we then said is, look, we want to have a very different conversation, right? So to do that, we needed to show that we were going to support them in a different way. So we gave them a prompt sheet. Here are 5 or 6 questions. We created some learning material, online learning material. And the online learning material wasn't about HR or any kind of people guru talking to them about this. We got frontline managers to talk about, when I do a job chat or I do a catch up, this is how I do it. This is what I find works. This is how to open the conversation. This is what so we basically gave them a tool. We supported them do it. What we then said is, all we need you to do is to capture on our app how many of those conversations you've had and just give us some of the feedback about what people have said to you. That's it. We did it once. We got, I'm trying to remember, we got 78% of frontline staff had a catch up the first time. That was sort of, I'm trying to remember the number. It's about 4, I think it was about, no, hang on a second, we got 9,500. It was about 7,500, 8,000 people. And then the second time we did it, we got even more. and we will continue to do this. Now, over time, I most probably will take away the whole process at some point in the future, because our managers will have learned that by doing this, they get the benefit. They could, I had lots of people. So when we had the frontline manager sessions, a lot of our frontline staff were going, I never talk to the drivers that do a good job. And why is that? Because I don't have time, because I've got a queue outside my office of doing disciplines, and I've got all of this other paperwork to do. And so what we've had to do is take away activity. We took away some of the safety. We took away some of the customer complaint information from the front of the organisation to say, managers, you've now got the time to do this. And here's the simple tool. We're not going to check up on you. We're not going to ask you. We just want you to know, have you done it? Checklist of your people to make sure you've had the conversation and just give us some initial feedback. And actually, they're starting to own it and now starting to drive it. So the point is, it takes time. It's about faith. It's about belief, and it's about support.
Yeah, I think also, and I hope that answers that question. But I think also, really implicitly, you're constantly talking about culture change. How do you change the values and behaviours? And it's not necessarily about over looking at the processes. It's looking at the empowering of people, which I think is you're pulling out time and time again. But sorry, you're going to say something, then I'm going to.
I think you're absolutely right. I'm a great believer in, and people say to me, though, how do you make sure they're doing it right? Well, the first time they did it, I don't think it did go particularly well. I would say a third did it brilliantly, a third did okay, and a third weren't very good. What I've got faith in is if the more I ask managers to do it, the more they practice, the better they'll get. We'll give them more learning support. We'll help them. We'll basically, and what we're then saying to them is, you've got to feedback. They said you did. So you've now got the data of what's come out of those catch-ups. What are you doing about it?
Yeah. Brilliant. And that reinforced, by the way, very well with that side, with the engagement side of where also you got the dashboards, showing you your own results against the company, etc. So you can do the same on that. So look, 2 questions, and then just for everyone listening, thank you for staying on. A couple of things just to let you know, we've got about 10, 15 minutes. We like to finish about 5 to let everyone get to their next meeting. We are going to talk briefly about the big people agendas of diversity, inclusion, climate change. And I want to finish with recommendations from you, Kevin, on any talk or podcast when it comes to developing leadership. So, and I'll answer this too, but I'll let you go first. This anonymous said, what are your response rates like for surveys, especially going quarterly, and how do you encourage participation? If the feedback is owned locally, how do you make sure that feedback is actually being listened to?
All right, there's a couple of things. So level of participation, it's varied. The first one, I think we got 32%. Then it was 34. It went up to 44. I think this time it will be, again, 40%. So we have been surveying the whole of the workforce every time. Yeah. Now, what we're intending to do next year is to do 2 surveys with the whole workforce, and then do sample surveys for 1 and 3. So the one we do in April. And that's a bit difficult. Anyway, I won't go into the mechanisms, but participation's been great. The point is as long as it's representative, that's all that matters. I'm not really going to I don't want to get 80, 90%. I'm quite happy with 40%, because that's representative of how our people feel. That's thousands of people giving us feedback every time we do this. The second part of the question was about,
if the feedback's locally, how do you make sure that feedback is listened to? Yeah.
Well, we measure it quarterly, don't we? So I'll tell you what happens is, the people that are taking action, their scores improve. The whole point of doing this quarterly is I can see by depot, 60 depots, I can see by team, I can see how scores are varying. And I'll tell you what, if it's flat or it's going down, they're not making anything happen, are they? Whereas if I then go, I can see, why is this unit or this team increasing its engagement? Well, they're doing stuff. So what you then do is you amplify the positive, and you point the people that aren't moving it at the people that are. And that's the job for my HR people locally, to go, look what Fiona and George and Harry are doing. Their engagement's improved by 25%. What they're doing is this, this, and this. Tea and toast sessions. They've got visible leadership and management walking around. They've we've done quite a lot of symbols of change at a macro level. We gave everyone free tea and coffee this year. We had feedback on one of our early surveys that, really great feedback, and it was replicated across the place. How comes managers get free tea and coffee, but frontline staff have to pay for it at the vending machine? And we sat there and went, that's a really good question, isn't it? And then, do you know what? We asked the question and we got this type of feedback. But if we give them free tea and coffee, they'll nick the tea bags or the coffee will disappear. We went, right, that's it. Symbol of change. Everyone has free tea and coffee across the whole. But now, I won't tell you about how much pain we had. We had, vending machine contracts to change. We had canteens in every facility that make tea and coffee. And we were absolutely had to stick to it. But it's a symbol of saying, you gave us feedback, we're going to change it. We had stuff about, cycle to work, because it's about, we have loads of people that drive to work. We need a cycle scheme. So we create a salary sacrifice scheme for bikes. And again, we've done that nationally. So there is stuff we do nationally, always on the basis of you said we did, but locally you use the data to hold the managers accountable for how they engage their staff.
Yeah.
And if it's not moving, they're not doing it, are they?
No, love that, Kevin. Just two things to add to that, and then we've got two more questions, then we've got the last 7 minutes. So industry standard between 30 and 50% when you're doing quarterly. So when you're doing it twice yearly to once yearly, it should be 70% plus. So you're very much in the middle of, you're in a good place between, as you say, I think you're going to be about another 40%, 42%. But one quick
thing on that, Matt, and I'll tell you what, is I think our participation will continue to stay at that level and possibly increase because we're doing things as a consequence. If you do things as a consequence, people will keep giving you feedback. If you ignore it and don't do anything, it becomes harder and harder. So it should become easier over time because people value it.
Yeah, no, totally. And then just to reinforce that for everyone listening, trend data is as Kevin is saying, is the key, because you're looking at the trends. Like, you can't just take the one and the one and the one. You need to take all 3 and 4 and go, now we can see what's going on. And then having the conversations with those managers going, hey, why are we trending downwards? Why are we trending flat? That would say that things aren't changing locally. That means things most likely aren't. To do it on a one-off is harder, but with trend data, you can really do that.
And the other thing that we spent quite a bit of time doing, and I haven't talked about this, is we engaged the union in it right from the beginning. So we got them locally to champion this. We asked them to use their learning centres in every depot to promote it and get people to fill it in. So they were supportive because they thought, actually, this is going to give us lots of feedback, and we shared the data with them. So engage your partners, engage the union, and okay, that is a little bit challenging at times, but it pays off in spades in the longer term.
Yeah, I'm going to hold you to 1 minute answers on these ones. So what do you do? Sarah says, what do you do with the grumpy 2, those people who no matter what do not adapt to the new or adopt the new approach?
Well, if it's it takes time. So what you will find over time is that people that behave in the old way will become outliers. And they will find it difficult to survive because the world moves around them. So, what we will find is through people centricity, we've got managers putting up their hand and go, this isn't for me anymore. I'm not sure I've got the skills. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's fine. If they want to go back and be a bus driver or do another job in the business, then that's fine. But if they're doing it in a respectful way, we'll find a way of supporting them. But there will be people that leave the organisation as a consequence. And I don't apologise for that, because I need people to operate and manage in a way which is consistent with our values and what we've set out to achieve. So, that's the point, is it changes over time, and the people that are the outliers are the ones that become, they become very visible.
Yeah. I was thinking of the old coaching thing I use sometimes, green bug, green field, survives and thrives. That field turns brown, green bug, got a few choices. It changes and becomes brown. It moves into a different field, or it gets eaten alive. And unfortunately, that typically can be what happens, where people, and then often people, it's interesting, people go, well, that's happened to me. And I'll go, I don't know. Do we have any choice in these things? And you're saying that, there's choice. There's always a choice, even if it's to leave the find somewhere else. But you're right about the standing out. The more and more the culture changes and becomes more positive as he goes. So last one from Diane, and then we're going to bring this into landing with about 3 minutes left. Do you have a one-size-fits-all approach to the surveys, or do you tailor and fit, e.g. frontline take-up? I'm not sure I understand fully
the question.
you mean by that, Dan. So if you can give us just a little bit more clarity. The questions and the surveys go to everyone. The questions are the same, although we can do branching questions depending on the department. I don't think we do.
Yeah, we keep the core questions the same. And again, when we get into doing the pulse surveys this year, we will questions, but keep the core ones, and we will add ones now and again. So the core, I don't know, we've got 20 questions. I think, as we go forward, 15 or 16 will always stay the same because we've got to make sure it's consistent. We're measuring like with like.
Diana's very helpfully clarified. Thank you. Technology and time for the front line, say on electronic, or is it all paper? So no, it's all electronic via mobile phones, QR codes, laptops, desktop, etc. So,
and one of the challenges, we haven't, all of our frontline staff haven't got email addresses, business email addresses, so we have to use the app. We've got an app where people, our drivers, for example, get their shifts on it. So it's pretty well used and we drive things that way. But that's why we got the union involved, because there are computer screens in all of our depots and they can go into the learning centres and tap on and take the survey that way. So you've got to find multiple ways and make it easy for people to do it.
Yeah, but it is all electronic. Absolutely. You do give people time to go and fill out the survey. And I know, is it about 2.5 weeks it's open? 2 weeks? 2 weeks.
2 weeks normally. Each period is a 2-week period, but again, it's I don't know, it's 10 minutes maximum. So you've got to make it easy. No, lots of narrative. It's very straightforward questions, easy to answer. And the bit we haven't talked about, and one of the things that you've helped us with, and one of the reasons why we like the Inpulse stuff, is it gives us emotions. It gives us data about how people are feeling. But why are they feeling that way? So that really is quite important, because we know that we get lots of feedback about being unappreciated. Hence, what a lot of the activity you've heard is getting managers to have those informal conversations so people feel listened to and heard. So that's been hugely important for us, that we've got not just engagement and empowerment, but we've actually got the emotional data underneath it.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, we've almost run out of time. So just with everyone still listening, I'd love to hear your recommendations for any podcast or book when it comes to engagement leadership that we've been talking about.
I'm a big podcast. I love listening to podcasts, and there's 2 or 3 that sort of leap up. I mean, one is the High Performance Podcast, which is Jake Humphreys and Damien Hughes. Damien Hughes is organizational psychologist, and one of his books, Barcelona Way, is one of my favorite books around culture. He talks about the commitment culture, so I would definitely recommend their one. Elizabeth Day about failure, I think, is really interesting. She interviews people about mistakes in their careers and failures and how you learn from it, and it's just a really good mindset shift. I think I'd recommend that. Books, I would talk about some of the stuff from Matthew Syed. I like Black Box Thinking. Bounce was good. Rebel Ideas, so a few there. I sort of, the other book I read recently. Oh, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was the guy from Ogilvy, Sutherland.
Oh, yes, yeah.
It was The Alchemist, I think it was, or Alchemy. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic. It's one of them books that when you read it, it just changes your mindset.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Kevin. And just to say for those listening, and thank you for staying on board with us. In terms of, we're not able to share any hard and fast data, but just to give you the kind of in the year, what we've seen First Bus go through is around about a 8 percentage point increase on their engagement index over the year. And in terms of the emotions, it's gone up actually significant. It's gone up about 50%, or in terms of actual percentage, it's gone up about 15 percentage points. Which has been huge. These are huge leaps in a year to get. So they are starting from a slightly lower point. I don't want to hide that.
That's fair.
But the point is, the trend is going exactly as you say, upwards. So for me, Kevin, I just want to say a huge thank you for sharing. I would really encourage everyone, and we'll send an email out after this, go and check out Kevin's book, Competitive People Strategy. Some of the quotes around it are fantastic. People Management said one of the most important and accessible HR books. And someone said, reading this book, it's a bit like having a world-class coach next to me. And that was one of the points I thought was fantastic. So hopefully you've enjoyed today. But Lucy, and thank you so much, Kevin, but I'll hand back to you, Lucy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt and Kevin. Great conversation. Love the interactivity. So as I mentioned, we will be sending out the recording early next week. If you do have any other questions for Matt, Kevin, let me know via email and I can pass those on for you. And as always, if you are interested in hearing a little bit more about our approach here at Inpulse, how we can potentially help you measure and drive engagement, then again, please let me know. And other than that, have a wonderful Friday afternoon and weekend. And thanks for joining.